back with another one. Somebody asked me about Juneteenth and the history of slavery. Being today is Juneteenth officially. Salute to that. And, well, before I continue, I am a little tired. I've been working on a plantation, and I also been working on the side of getting off the plantation through the Underground Railroad, but that's another story. So bear with me on this one, y'all. But yeah, it is Juneteenth. Now, everybody black don't observe or celebrate Juneteenth for whatever reason. But everybody don't. But the point is, Juneteenth exists for a reason. So let's talk about these reasons. Now, what exactly is Juneteenth? Well, Juneteenth is pretty much the observation of the ending of chattel slavery in America. But the thing is, back then there was no TV or radio, so the news traveled slower, and the news didn't hit Texas till June. So this is pretty much the origin of Juneteenth. Now, what I think of Juneteenth, I mean, it's pretty much proof that chattel slavery existed. That's a no-brainer. And I say this because there is a lot of talk, or some talk, that there was no slavery, didn't exist, and we were here in America already. Something to that effect. Which is, if you ask me, a lot of that comes from because it's African Americans, black, whatever you want to call themselves, who's really pushing that narrative. It's just, if you ask me, they don't want nothing to do with their African identity. Due to, when you think of Africa, you think of poverty, and they don't want nothing to do with that. That's pretty much where that comes from, the self-hate. It don't really come from the finding out the truth about who they really are or the nature of their condition. It's just pretty much they don't want nothing to do with Africa, so there wasn't no such thing as slavery if you asked them. But we all know that's BS, and for one, that's a deceptive comment, and I'll retouch that in a second. But again, Juneteenth proves that slavery existed. And it also points out the power of information and misinformation due to they didn't get the news till like 2-3 months down the line. And then, of course, you had plantation owners that was reluctantly want to acknowledge that the war was over, no more glory. But so you had that, but the point was the news didn't reverberate till much later. And y'all think about that as far as social media, because you got so much fake news, you got to be able to know the difference. But yeah, man, that's what Juneteenth means to me when we speak in American history and slavery or whatever. You know, another thing that comes to mind that I really like to point out and acknowledge is the state of Florida. If you notice, the state of Florida, the majority of the cities in the state of Florida start with the word fort. Now, why is that? And this is due to 3 great wars the U.S. had to fight with the native tribes in the Florida area. The Seminole Indians, the Seminole Wars. Now, what does Seminole mean? Seminole pretty much is another word for runaway or outlaw, due to a lot of the escaped slaves escaped the plantation and went to the state of Florida and intermingled with the native tribes there for a few generations. And they was able to hold off the United States for a long time. They fought 3 great wars. The U.S. also lost the second one. You know, and then our country don't like to talk about it, but yeah, they lost that second war, but the U.S. had to establish a whole bunch of forts, which means military fortifications along the state of Florida to, of course, overwhelm the native tribes. But pretty much the point is, for one, more history of the slavery, because Seminole wasn't the name of the native tribes. We just gave it that term. So Seminole means runaway, outlaw, the Seminole Indians. And they was rocking. So it's just proof. And again, they consisted of escaped slaves and native tribes, generation that intermingled. You understand? So more proof and a history lesson as well. And again, this is why Florida, every name. As a matter of fact, let me share something with y'all. Let me read this real quick. Now it says, before the U.S. Army engineers constructed permanent masonry fortifications, U.S. soldiers and American civilians in Florida established and settled around in permanent forts. Conquering Florida's territory involved waging war on Florida's Native American population in the Seminole Wars, which inspired the establishment of several forts that later became settlements. As a result of the first two Seminole Wars, 1817 through 1818 and 1835 through 1842, more than 80 blockhouses, camps, forts, and stockades were established from Apalachicola across the peninsula. These were earthen permanent forts designed to provide troops with temporary protection. Many of these settlements survive today. They include Forts Basinger, Lauderdale, Meade, Myers, Fort Myers, you heard of that, heard of Fort Lauderdale, Fort Pierce, Walton, and White. Other settlements that removed fort from their names include Dade City, Denard, Jupiter, and Maitland. And some settlements adopted new names. Tampa, see, it used to be called Fort Brooke. Bartlow used to be called Fort Blount. Clearwater used to be called Fort Harrison. And Miami used to be called Fort Dallas. The Second Seminole War, 1835 through 1842, the bloodiest of the wars with the Seminoles, began on December 28, 1935, when an Indian killed an Indian agent and a lieutenant at Fort King near Arcola. This 70-year guerrilla war, in which the Seminoles fought Americans to retain their land in north-central Florida, forced American troops to seek security as they combated Native Americans throughout Middle Florida. During this war, the War Department ordered Lieutenant Colonel George Mercer Brooke from Pensacola to Tampa as it continues. And as you see, the U.S. lost the Second War. They had to get pushed back. And the Third War is when they really fought it down and I guess eventually brought in heavy military presence and eventually won the battle. Now, another thing I want to point out is that, see, the United States acquired Florida from Spain. See, a lot of people don't realize that Portugal and Spain was involved in the slave trade way before Britain got in the game. This is why South America, it's all Spanish. And more proof of the slave trade, you got more Africans down there than you got up here. And you also have evidence of escaped slaves down that way, escaping and starting their own Seminole, basically called Colombos, when they intermingled with the natives there and they fought off, you understand, basically slave traders. You know, there's stories of actually a kidnapped African. She was a princess, but she had military experience, and she also orchestrated plenty of slave revolts and started Colombos. And excuse me for not knowing her name, but you research it, you'll find out. And this is just more proof that chattel slavery existed. Now I want to revisit the whole notion that we was already here prior to the slave trade. See, now there's different variables on that, because definitely, all humanity comes from Africa. So you definitely got stories of the Olmecs, who was before the Mayan and all that civilization. So, and another thing, yes, you do definitely, even back after the Mississippi Temple Mound builders, yeah, those were darker people, yes. And they definitely origin stems to Africa too, just like yours, just like everybody's. So when y'all say, oh, we here, we native here, y'all not really specifying the time and place, which is very important, because when y'all usually bring that up, or when y'all bring that up, it's always to counter that chattel slavery existed. But it's usually got something not wanting to do with your African identity. Or, oh, I wasn't no slave, I was here. They came and they took our land. Yeah, they definitely took the land from the natives here. And there definitely was some darker colored natives. There's actually 3 great migrations, but that's a different story. So there's definitely validity to that. But to denounce the slave trade, nah, that's a slap in the face to all the people who fought and died for you to be here. Up until then, up to the Jim Crow, the lynchings until now. So what do you mean? And Juneteenth is observation of the ending of that. So what more proof that you need? You know, so, and I can point out some more history lessons if y'all want to, yeah. Matter of fact, let's see. Where was I? Yeah. The U.S., Spain, and Portugal was in the game prior than the English. Then the English got in the game. This is why we have English names if you are African American and you speak English, and versus a brother or sister born down in Brazil and they speak Spanish. You understand? Or Cuban, a Cubano, like them ball players. They look just like me, huh? Until they open their mouth, huh? People joke about that. So, forget all that. That's child's play. But this is for those who don't know and they looking for truth. You understand? It's definitely layers. So it's a lot of fake news again. But yeah, man, it's Juneteenth, and again, not everybody that's African American or black or whatever they call themselves acknowledge or observe Juneteenth for whatever reason. Maybe religious, political, or they may have an impression, because you got some of us that feel like, hey man, how should I put it? They feel like they hate the fact that slavery existed, so it's kind of like screw America to that extent. You understand? Because not only slavery existed, but we still dealing with racism and discrimination and all that. So it's like, to hell with all that stuff. So that's where they coming from. So they don't want nothing to do with it. You understand? So I understand, and I also understand that our forefathers, we built this nation. Whether it wasn't our choice, but we was forced to build this nation. You understand? So this is ours. This is our rightful inheritance, and that's where the talk of reparations need to proceed at. We built this nation. This is why this nation is great. From a good large part of us, a very large part. You understand? We made a severe, what they say, contribution to this country. You understand? Ain't nobody contributed to this country more than we is. We more American than anybody, whether we acknowledge it or not. So I look at it like that as well. It's kind of like, again, it's just your inheritance. Whether you want it or not, it's yours. You understand? So, but I also understand that, hey man, screw this country and screw this racist country and this and this and that. And yeah, screw all the hate and racism, definitely. But the point is, this is yours. People that came before you fought and died for you to be here. So you can't slap them in the face. But that's a totally different video, man. Point is, man, Juneteenth, happy Juneteenth for what it's worth. Again, some people, it's just a day off, and some people, hey, whatever, they'll take it. They ain't really tripping on it like that. And because everybody black, and that's for those out there who's not black, probably don't even mention it to somebody black, because somebody black may take it offensive due to you don't know how they feel about it. You understand? Everybody black ain't the same. We may look the same, but we ain't the same. We don't think the same. We don't function the same. We all ain't the same, you know. But we all in this together, though. But whether you like it or not, yeah. Juneteenth is an observation of the ending of chattel slavery. And again, some of us is, hey, I want to point this out because a lot of us is like, yeah, Juneteenth, all that's fine, but we sick of the, what we call, you know, the tokenism. We don't want another holiday. We don't want a statue. We don't want a street name. You know, we want our just due. You know what I'm saying? We want that true equality. We want that 40 acres and a mule. That's what we want. Just because you pushing for that and you a black person, that don't make you racist or discriminatory or none of that. Just because you pushing for your interests don't mean you hating on nobody else's interests or you saying screw their interests. You doing what you naturally supposed to do. Every culture does this. Even in America, within America, we know it's all one nation and all that, but everybody got their own culture, subculture, whatever you want to call it. So, them are the things you need to think about.